Recording in progress.
2023 City Council Work Session. My name is Randy Groves. I am the Council President, sitting in for the Mayor, who has connected with us virtually, but is unfortunately still homesick. I'll call this work session to order. Thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcasts and meeting materials webpage. Thank you again for joining us. This work session is proposed wastewater expansion to serve Goshen and the Short Mountain landfill. And as I already said, I'm calling this meeting to order. City Manager.
Thank you, Council President. Before I turn it over to Matt Rodriguez, our Public Works Director, I wanted to say we don't actually have a second topic today. We had held that space not knowing if Monday night's meeting was going to cross over and you would need that time to take actions before you went on break. I would like to do a couple of info items when we get there. So with that, I'm going to ask Matt Rodriguez, our Public Works Director, to introduce our guests and our topic.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah said, I'm Matt Rodriguez. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Eugene. Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilors. I'd like to introduce Dan Hurley, the Public Works Director for Lane County, and Rob Woodward, Project Manager for this project. They're here to share a little bit about the county's priority project to extend wastewater service to Goshen and the Short Mountain landfill. This has been a project on their books for a while, and they're coming basically to the point where they're looking to try and advance that project. There's a couple of points where council will have consideration of action to support that or not. So they're here to give you a high level conceptual understanding of that project before you start to see processes start to move forward, such as Metro Plan amendments, and would eventually require an update to the MWMC IGA. And they're going to talk a little bit about those particular points. So with that, I'll throw it over to you.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon, Mayor, Council President, Councilors. Again, yes, my name is Dan Hurley. I'm the Public Works Director at Lane County. I'm joined by Rob Woodward. He's our Special Districts Project Manager, working with Dexter and Mapleton and all our special districts that are struggling with water and wastewater issues. I'm also joined over on the side here. Jared Bowder is our associate planner for this project, and we have a number of city and MWMC, Springfield and Eugene staff who've been very helpful getting us to this point. So thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. So yes, I'm here to talk about the Goshen Wastewater Project. This is a proposed infrastructure project that ties to a regionally significant economic development project to advance development in Goshen. So you're all probably familiar with Goshen, but just to set the context. So Goshen's located about 4 miles to the south of Eugene. In between Eugene and Goshen, you have Lane Community College and Oak Hill School. There has been some recent talk about adding wastewater service to those entities, but I want to be clear that that's not what we're talking about today, and that would take additional action, additional land use exception process. So we're really just focusing in on Goshen and the Short Mountain landfill. So Goshen is significant in that it is a large contiguous area of industrial land, already zoned as industrial land. There's 233 acres of general industrial and another 83 acres there of light industrial. It's underdeveloped. There's been previous industry, there's current industry there, but there are a lot of brownfields, a lot of underdeveloped industrial land. So talking more about the potential for Goshen, this has been an interest of the county for more than 10 years. Coming out of the Great Recession, there was interest to try to provide more industry, more jobs in that area. So as I spoke, it's in a large area of contiguous industrial land. It also has some unique features in its location, being at the intersection there of Highway 99, Interstate 5 and Highway 58. There's also a main rail line running through there, and then connection to the Bonneville Power substation. It's being already served by a water district and has access to fiber optics for communication. And the great thing about Goshen is also, it's very close to Eugene, Springfield, so good labor markets to serve potential industries in that area. it hasn't been developed to its full potential because there are some barriers to that. Regulatory barriers, and we've been kind of working through those over the last several years. And the one that involves the city council is with the Metro Plan, and then I'll talk more about that in detail. There's also an inadequate sewer infrastructure. The properties are currently just being served by septic systems, not appropriate for advancing larger industries. So that ties to the regulatory barrier, and we'll get into that. So some background, this came out of Lane County, the Board of Commissioners in 2011. They made it a strategic plan goal. The goal was by 2017, so we've missed that. We're still working on it. Lane County will transform the existing industrial land in Goshen to support increased levels of development, resulting in jobs that pay no less than 150% of the median wage. And at that time, it was projected that Goshen could support an additional 2,000 to 3,000 industrial manufacturing jobs. We worked with the state, in particular Business Oregon, to have a designation called the RSIA, a regionally significant industrial area, and got that designation, which would provide some incentives and ways of expediting land use permits to allow the zoning pieces and industrial development to occur. That program has since expired, and they've replaced it with something called the RSIA program, the Regionally Significant Industrial Site, or sorry, I've got an error there, RSIS. And we haven't applied for that yet, but that could be attainable for Goshen to provide some of these similar benefits. After that, the county worked to create what was called the GREAT Plan, the Goshen Regional Employment and Transition Plan. And through that plan and the zoning ordinances that were enacted, it was intended to address barriers. This took us through obtaining a Goal 14 exception, that's a statewide planning Goal 14, which relates to urbanization. That action was appealed. It went all the way to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals, and required the county to address a number of additional factors. The key one that relates to our conversation today is that we needed to show that wastewater was feasibility for their area. So we moved from the RSIA to the GREAT Plan, and then went into a wastewater feasibility study to be able to address that LUBA remand. We looked at a number of different options for providing wastewater service, but it was found that the most economical, the most benefits environmentally, cost-wise, would be to tie into the existing regional facility, MWMC, that serves the Eugene Springfield area. We looked at a lagoon option, similar to Lane Community College. Those are challenging environmentally. Looked at a system just for Goshen, but just economies of scale, that's very expensive to have an independent wastewater treatment facility for something of this scale. From that first wastewater study, we have had a couple of others, one that looked at more of the financial and administrative parts of that, and then what was called the project definition report, which got into the conceptual engineering. And so there's been some lag in this process. There was the COVID pause. There were just other competing priorities, and we didn't have funding identified to really move this along. Since then, coming out of COVID and federal potential infrastructure money, we've identified some potential funding sources through the state and some county funds that we've held from video lottery. We're at a point where we'd like to see this move towards getting shovel ready so that we could potentially get to completion on this project. So I'll pass now to Rob, and he'll give you a quick overview of the route, the proposed route for the sewer line.
Okay, so the tap is in Springfield, and it comes down, it's in Franklin Boulevard and Nugget Way area. And so what we'll do is we'll tap the existing system, run down the alignment that's shown on the map there, and commence or down into the Goshen area. The infrastructure plan is a force main along Highway 99, along with 4 pump stations. It's approximately 17,000 linear feet of sanitary sewer. And the connection up in Springfield will be an 18-inch connection on the sewer on Franklin Boulevard. The service area is approximately 444 acres. And the flow of the system at full build out will be 560,000 gallons per day. The other segment of this project, as referenced earlier, was the Short Mountain Landfill extension. Currently, the leachate that comes out of that is 76,000 gallons per day, and it is trucked. And so the distance that they have to travel is 6.25 miles. So by connecting to this transfer station, we can eliminate all the things that come out of that effort for trucking.
All right. Thanks, Rob. So what's called leachate, it's the wastewater coming out of the landfill. That's, all the rainwater, there's the water in the garbage that kind of percolates through the landfill and it's contained in a cell. That has to be treated. And we looked at running a sewer line in the late 90s, and that didn't move forward. And so since then, for 24 years now, we've been trucking this wastewater leachate. So we've traveled over 1 million miles with these trucks, and it's quite an operation. Would love to get those trucks off the road. They produce carbon emissions to the tune of over 600 metric ton CO2 equivalent. It's identified as a key action in Lane County's climate action plan. So, and just to emphasize that this wastewater already goes to the MWMC regional system. So it would just be avoiding that trucking piece, but it wouldn't add additional flows. So we've worked through with that conceptual engineering design, some estimated costs. So about 14.4 million for the construction costs and up to 25.4 million for the total project cost, which would include a buy-in to the regional system for the capacity that it would use, lateral lines, permitting, so the design work to get to that total project cost.
That's just Short Mountain extension.
No, that's the total. That's so the main issue and why we're here today is that currently with the Metro Plan, service isn't allowed to be extended beyond the urban growth boundary, except for some specific places. So there is precedent on this now. So policy 26 says wastewater and wastewater services shall not be provided outside the UGB except to the following areas. And so in that line A there, it lists some other areas where coverage has been extended, in particular out to the airport. So the thought is that it could follow along these lines and be an exception to that policy. The other issue is with the MWMC intergovernmental agreement. So that matches the Metro Plan, that it doesn't allow service to extend beyond the UGB except in certain circumstances. So we would need to also amend that. And so that's another point where City Council would need to weigh in. That would need to be approved by the City of Springfield, the City of Eugene, and Lane County for both of these, the Metro Plan and the MWMC IGA. So just some key points to wrap up. So it's a significant project in that it could increase the economic vitality for the region. Quite a number of large properties, and the Lane County Board has been interested in trying to facilitate, with the proximity to the landfill, the potential for a material recovery facility, some, green industries, circular economy type concepts that could play out in Goshen with some incentives there. Efficiency and environmental benefits. I spoke to this a little bit, but you have a world-class wastewater treatment facility here that has been nationally recognized for its use of biosolids and is exploring innovative things such as recycled wastewater. It would be great to be able to tap into that terrific system that's already there rather than trying to build a cost-prohibitive system that would just serve Goshen. To state again, the landfill leachate is already coming to the system, wouldn't add flow there. And then the flow from Goshen would be added over a very slow, very long period of time. Build out in this area, probably over 20 years. So and in total at full build out would account for less than 2% of the existing flows coming into the system. It's our intent that that this would be of no cost to the existing ratepayers. The development would pay its way. We would need to work with MWMC to figure out, what would be the buy-in cost, what's appropriate for the use of the existing system, and what would be the connection charges for developments as they come in. And would plan to keep working on that before we return to you in the fall. And also want to just emphasize that, as I spoke in the beginning, this wouldn't open the door automatically to other areas. That would take additional action to approve other areas such as Lane Community College, Oak Hill School. There's been some talk of Presswell, but that would need more analysis. It would also take additional land use. So right now under state law, connecting to the unincorporated area of Goshen and to the landfill are outright allowed. So the Metro plan is just prohibiting that. So, but for these other areas, such as Lane Community College, we would have to go through a land use exception policy process to be able to allow those. So next steps. So here's where we are right now. Appreciate your time to be able to introduce this concept to you. We'll be talking with your planning commission at a joint planning commission public hearing on April 4th. Then we'll move into deliberations with each of the planning commissions. We're going to do a similar thing as we've done here today with the City of Springfield Council and on May 8th. And then we're going to have to take a pause due to summer recesses. And with the intent that we would keep working on this, in particular with the issues we need to work through with MWMC and coming to some agreements around operation and maintenance and the various cost factors. And then we would return to you in the fall. So the intent is we would have a joint elected public officials meeting and then deliberations and action following that. So that completes the briefing. Just again, we're not asking for any action at this time, but wanted to get this on your radar as this moves forward to the Planning Commission and with intent to try to get to action in the fall. So subject to your questions, that completes my briefing.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I appreciate how succinct, informative, and to the point it was. So with that, I see we have Councilor Clark in the queue, and I'll add Councilor Zelenka. Councilor Clark.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the report, gentlemen, and the planning and all the work that's gone into this. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'm strongly in support. I believe that there are benefits beyond even that which you've mentioned today, and there are several in what you mentioned today, obviously. One of the others is that this council is about to embark on work with a West Eugene overlay zone where we have a long-standing challenge, I think, to get adequate heavy industry and manufacturing into our area that benefits us without it being too close to a lot of people's homes. And I think this provides yet another opportunity for us to create, a fairly large scale opportunity for industry. And at the same time, it's not overly close to so many people's residential areas that it creates any kind of health risk. So to the extent that we can get Goshen up and going as an opportunity to put agricultural products on rail all the way to Seattle and be able to sell them internationally. There's a lot of wheat farmers around here who would like to see that take place. So, and save on the transportation costs. So I think the quicker we get Goshen ready, the better off it will be for all of us. And I'm very strongly in support.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, thanks. My main concern about all of this is the violation of the UGB and how that all interacts. I know that some people wish the whole land use system and UGB would just go away, but there are actually many benefits to compact urban growth, including energy, greenhouse gas emissions, land use, natural resources, et cetera, all the goals around land use that we have to apply every time we do a land use action. There's ways of limiting. I mean, the whole point of having urban growth boundary is so you don't have external non-compact urban growth in areas. So one of the ways around this is through the RISA or RSIA, the Regional Significant Industrial Area So one of the questions I had, and I have multiple questions, might need a second round, is related to the way that this gets done. I know that when Coburg was, and Matt might need to come up to the table for this, the way that Coburg project was assessed, they ended up with kind of almost the exact opposite conclusion, which was it's not the most cost-effective way to serve Coburg by extending a line out there. They actually ended up building their own wastewater treatment plant because of the hookup costs. And so I'm wondering what changed about that. And there's several things in here that you talk about where the estimated total project costs nearly double because of the hookup cost. And I'm wondering how if the Goshen area is going to be free riders on a system that we all paid for by not having to pay those hookup fees. I'm wondering how that gets addressed.
So Councilor, our intent that they wouldn't be free riders, that there would be a buy-in cost that would be proportional to the capacity that this would be taking up in the existing infrastructure. And then with system development charges that as there are hookups, and Matt can probably talk more about this. With the previous studies, we did propose a couple different ways that this buy-in could work, and we need to work through, which would be the most desired by MWMC. And so those conversations still need to be had and arrive at a specific dollar amount on those. But the intent wouldn't be that this would be a free ride on that. I don't have the knowledge of Coburg of why they landed on that. I think there may have been some additional land use issues around that because Coburg is an incorporated area, so that might have required some more exception issues to be able to approve that. As far as the cost goes, I'm surprised that it would be cost effective for them to run and operate their own facility. We're not finding that that's the case in Crestwell. That's really struggling. There's a sort of an economies of scale piece where a larger facility can absorb flows easier than.
Yeah, the Coburg issue was about the buying cost. Maybe Matt can go to the table and address that, but they found that wasn't cost effective to be able to do that. I'm wondering what's changed so that now Goshen and all the potential industrial customers come into this area, and that makes that cost effective for them to do it.
So Matt Stouter, MWMC Executive Officer. I too wasn't around when Coburg was happening. I was in a different department, but my understanding is that, that's residential development that they needed to come up with a large chunk of money to pay for the buy-in costs at that time, because they had basically wastewater ready to go and deliver as soon as that hooked up. This situation's a little bit different. Another difference here is that with the industry, not that industry is going to have the potential to manufacture more money, but the SDCs are different. The buy-in cost will be different for industry. So when you're looking at your rate base, it's a different rate base.
Yeah, maybe you can answer the question of why there's a buy-in cost.
So we want to ensure that we protect the investment from the existing users that have already, in essence, purchased all the facilities that we have.
So people have to buy into the system that everybody else already paid for, because there's capacity that they need to then pay.
Correct. We want to protect the capacity investment that's remaining for the two cities, as well as the existing investment that the users have paid for.
Because if we just let someone pay the wastewater fee without the buy-in cost, then they would not pay for any of that infrastructure that got built. So the buy-in cost is a way of recouping the investment that everybody else already made.
Correct. They're looking at, we haven't
Taking
seen.
up capacity that would be used in the city.
Correct.
Okay, well, how that gets done is really quite an important thing. And so would there be a limit or prohibition for residential and commercial hookups in that? This is the I in risk, or RSIA, is industrial. So how does that work? And secondarily, the line that goes from Goshen to Short Mountain also has a potential to have hookups to it. And one of the things they did a long time ago was limit the size of that, like to 2 inches, just to handle the leachate. And then you didn't have any capacity issues because nobody could hook up to it because it was already active.
Alan, you're over 20 seconds over, buddy.
Would you like me to respond to that?
Please respond and then we'll move on. I'll put you
Okay.
down for a second round.
I might have to pitch to our planner. My understanding was that this could service the boundary of the unincorporated area. So that does have some residential, but it's pretty minimal. But we also do need to pass ordinances that prevent cross connections beyond that. And sorry, I'm forgetting the second question you had.
Size of the line or short.
The size of the line. So the size of the line to Short Mountain would limit that. It would be, we would need a 4-inch line. We'd actually like to do a 6-inch line just for future capacity or scaling of the line over time. But a 6-inch line isn't going to be able to provide a whole lot of service for additional residential uses. So if the joint bodies were interested in allowing further connections beyond Short Mountain, such as to Crestwell, we would want to size this project differently. So we would like to follow this up with a discussion on that fairly soon if this was approved. But at this point, we're only looking at a 6-inch line to service the landfill.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have any other counselors for first round, but I have some comments and questions. To begin with, I agree with Councilor Clark in that we want to have space between our industrial applications, residential, parks, and schools, which is what prompted our work on the public health overlay zone. So I am concerned about that. I'm also concerned with what Councilor Zelenka brought up regarding development outside the UGB and what that is going to mean. I mean, Eugene is still dealing with decisions that are made many years ago with the ICO area, the industrial triangle, that has a lot of industry that's outside the city. At the same time, the city is subsidizing and supporting those operations. Fire, for example, we have some large industrial applications that are not in the city of Eugene, but they get city fire service because when the volunteer agencies show up, they call for mutual aid. And so we are still providing metro level protection and service without receiving any remuneration to cover the cost of the operation. So that's just a kind of a comment. I'm probably going to need a second round as well. Would current residential and current industry in Goshen be forced to join, or will that be some other triggering mechanism? I mean, we went through this in the River Road, Santa Clara area, and people still remember that.
There is state law around that. If you're in the proximity to us, I forget the distance, that there would be a forced hookup. Right now, we would just be focusing on the main trunk line. So those lateral lines that might, reach that proximity distance to a residential home would be years off. So I'm not anticipating in the near future.
Something for a future conversation. I would be interested in knowing the price per lineal foot and the incremental increase by adding pipe size. And also the length of service that's anticipated out of a pipeline like that, because I know it's if we're doing it now, it's cheaper to size it the way we think we're going to need in the future rather than having to dig it up and replace it.
Right. I'd be happy to bring those cost figures back to you in the fall.
Right. Just so we can get kind of an idea, cost benefit. Another thing I know you're not going to address today that I want my colleagues to be aware of if they're not. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with Steve Miller, the CEO of Bulk Handling Systems, which is a West Eugene business located on West 5th and Wallace. And they build large scale industrial recycling equipment. And they're putting in an operation in Goshen with the county that's going to dramatically change our recycling capability and extend the service life of the Short Mountain landfill by 25 years. In addition, it's going to have the potential to capture, I believe, to begin with 100,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas from the time they start operating. That could go up to 300,000 metric tons, which is a significant progress in our CAP 2.0 piece. So that's something that I know we're going to get a discussion about later, but I think it's important we keep that in mind when we're talking about running sewer lines and trying to keep the waste from getting into the ground system, plus the leachate from having to be trucked back and forth, which is also additional greenhouse gas. And now I'm over time. Councilor
Thanks.
Keating.
Thanks, Council President. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to express some concerns, some things I was hearing and echoing what Alan brought up. We're considering connecting 440 acres just south of LCC at the same time that there's proposed UGB expansion of the 180 acres of the woods around Lane Community College and known wildlife big game passageway. That gives me pause for concern. I hear quote, there's intent that there's no additional cost to ratepayers, and we would need to return to that in the fall. While I hear that intent, I would like to see that. You touched on green opportunities and referenced the world-class wastewater facility. I would like to hear more about those green opportunities, both at the Planning Commission and when you return in the fall, please.
Okay, do that. Thank you, Councilor.
Continuing on now in round one with Councilor Semple, followed by Councilor Ye.
I'm pretty much going to reiterate what Alan and Randy said, but I think it's a great idea, the sustainability part, coordinating resources to deal with more area is great. But my concern also is why put in a 6-inch line if we think we might need an 8-inch line? I don't think people should have to pay to, rip up what we have put in. So I know that's another project beyond this one, but with the potential of residential or commercial growing outside that area, and would make sense to connect them also if we have the capacity to deal with that much. So I would just like to see that addressed a little more so that we don't find ourselves in a bind of having to redo something. But otherwise, I'm pretty excited about it. I think it has a lot of benefits. And if it's not going to cost us money and maybe bring in a little money, even better. So thank you for this work in the presentation. It was very clear. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Ye.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank folks for coming. As you know, I serve on the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission. And we've been talking about this for a while now, it seems, a little bit at a time. And commissioners also had many of the same concerns that we all have talked about here and have come to the conclusion that this is the direction that makes a lot of sense. I think especially for the Short Mountain landfill, the trucking, the waste is just not a long-term thing we want to be doing. We shouldn't have been doing it for this long, but this is where we were, right? And this fix will make our community safer. We, as you have said, we do have a world-class facility. I think something we should all be very proud of. And while I think, considering connections such as other communities is a bigger discussion that we need to have, these two changes, I think, are very warranted and will help us regionally to be making good decisions, both for our environment and for our neighbors. So I'm very supportive. I think the commission has been very supportive. And also, I just want to make sure that everyone knows we also have the same concerns around ratepayers and making sure we're being responsible to the people that we serve. So.
City Manager.
I'm just trying to get in the queue. I also wanted to mention, and I was having Denny double check it because you talked a lot about Lane County's plans and this being a priority, but I want to mention that it was also in Envision Eugene. So the council's adopted kind of vision for how you wanted Eugene to grow, actually called out specifically supporting Lane County's efforts to develop an employment center in Goshen. So this is kind of one of those policies that goes from 2012 to 2023, but it's something we've considered for years.
Thank you, City Manager. We'll move on to round two. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, my main concern here is about making sure that there's no subsidy going to the Goshen industrial place. And I would talked a lot about this, but kind of in vague terms, and it wasn't even really addressed in the AS. So if could you guys get us a memo that shows how this does not occur, that subsidy doesn't occur? How do we prevent, as you said in your bullet, no increased cost to existing ratepayers, and show the math? That would be very helpful, including the hookup costs. The second issue around Short Mountain, totally down with the getting the leachate out of Short Mountain via a line. The reason that project died, and I was around when it was being discussed back then, was there were folks that wanted to have a pipe that was much bigger than the capacity of what the leachate was. And that allowed for hookups to it because it had its additional capacity. And so back then, I think but that was a long time ago, the calculations are changed. But the landfill hasn't changed that. It's growing, but leachate volumes probably don't increase dramatically on a year-to-year basis. So what's the calculation to get to the size of the line? Used to be 2, is it 4 inches, and we do a 6-inch for a little bit of capacity? And what are the protections against hooking up to that? Because that was what killed the project before. So if we could see the calculations on what the capacity is for the Short Mountain line and what the additional capacity would be and what the potentiality of additional hookups would be for that. I mean, I'm okay with all of that as long as we don't have another blowout of the UGB for urban services way out there, and then all this development happens out there. That's kind of the antithesis of what we're trying to do with the land use laws. And then with regard to residential commercial hookups in Goshen, is there going to be a limitation on where that the hookups can come from, or is it just is there a boundary around that Goshen area? And so then within that, there's potentially some commercial and residential hookups that could occur. Because we're facilitating an industrial facility, but I don't want to facilitate another whole urban area outside the UGB. So if we could get some information on that. And just since I'm an electricity and power guy, your power bullet on the third slide, very unlikely that Bonneville Power Administration would serve any of the industrial customers because they're just not big enough. It's really going to be the local utility there, which would be EPUD. And there is a substation there, but it's a very, very high voltage substation, and you need to step down that transformation to get there. So any very large commercial or industrial would have to go through EPUD to get there.
Okay. Did you want a third round? No. Okay, we're going to go back just a moment to first round. See, the mayor has her hand up. I apologize for missing you, Mayor.
Oh, that's okay. I'm very interested to hear everyone's comments, and I actually appreciate Alan's sort of line of questioning, which has shed a lot of light on some of the concerns, both about the UGB and about the capacity piece. I'm happy for this proposal. I think in a couple of ways, I think the sustainability part of it seems very valuable, taking trucks off the road to be able to pipe the leachate from the landfill sounds good. I am, share some concerns about the UGB. And so I also appreciate councilors asking for more clarification about that. At the same time, we know we have a shortage of developable industrial land in this area. And we know that proximity to I-5 is really, sort of one of our greatest assets regionally. And so when I think about industrial development along I-5, I think actually in terms of an economic development strategy that, makes a huge amount of sense and is a huge benefit. So I'm really looking forward to the ongoing conversation and really appreciate the questions my colleagues have been asking and appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We're back to round 2. Councilor Semple.
Again, I'm sort of putting emphasis on what's been said. Aside from the climate and the Short Mountain, we really, really need new jobs. And that's been something that we mention quite often, but we don't have a whole lot of plans of how we're going to make this happen. So I think the opportunity to have more jobs is really a critical thing. However, we also want people to live closer to work and not have to drive, from Veneta to Goshen or any of our other areas. So I think, thinking very long-term, it's inevitable that there will be some residential and commercial, hopefully not slammed up against industry, but close by. And we should look at, when I believe that happens, will they be needing a new treatment plant, or will they also want to hook up? And can we have that capacity? And if so, how big is that pipe going to need to be? So I know that's beyond the scope of what we're thinking about right now, but I think it's a reality. We need those jobs once people start working there, regardless of whether they're in or out of our UGB. They will need wastewater treatment. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Semple. Are there any other counselors for round two? I know I've got one last question. I'm not seeing any hands. Along with the sewer line, does that mean a water line needs to be added as well, or will they be working off of wells?
A good question. No, there's already a water service district and a line that runs in that area.
Right. And is that all self-contained, or does it tap into metro area water?
That is self-contained. Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you all have any more final comments to make?
I would just add that with respect to the rate equity piece, that's a requirement for us to make sure that that happens in our IGA, and the council will have, along with Springfield and Lynn County, an opportunity to review that again. And our commission is very sensitive to that. And so I hear the concerns, and that is something that will be addressed.
Thank you very much. I know rates are concerned for all of us in our community. So that will be, we'll be looking forward to hearing that information. And I'm quite eager for our next work session on this issue and talking about how we make our area more sustainable and better ecologically. So thank you. City Manager, did you have anything else along these lines? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, excuse me, Councilor Semple now.
I just want to say thank you, because we've been dealing with so many things that are difficult. And this is a positive thing. So it's really nice to hear some plans that are getting us to places we want to go. And I thank you for that, because we're going on our break and I like to leave with happiness. So thank you.
Have we had something difficult lately?
Nothing. It's all in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well,
City Manager.
Yeah, if you just let me completely control your calendar, we could make some changes there. I wanted to just give a couple of updates before you go on your break. So just things to know, and I'll probably follow up with a couple of them on emails. The first one is we've been working really hard on the due diligence for eWeb, and Matt and Christy have been leading the way on that. And it looks like we're probably going to be ready to sign. I'll be ready to sign a purchase and sale agreement as early as this week. So for sure, while you're on break, we will have made that next step. Really, really great work from the attorneys and the partnership with eWeb. Things have just been moving along really, really well in that way. The second thing is we haven't received information back from the county on the signature verifications, but if depending on the timing of that, there's a possibility that you might have to have a special meeting while you're on break to meet our code timelines. If that happens, which I don't know if it will, my intention will be that we do that on Zoom, because I know some people are going to be gone. So we'll convene, but we'll do it in a way that makes it easy for everybody to attend. I have to talk to the mayor more about that. And then the last thing is a couple of you mentioned the public health overlay zone. And so when you get your calendar this week, you'll see that we've started to flesh out the rest of the spring. One of the topics that's coming back to you is the Bethel area plan. And the way that work session poll was worded was that you approved was you wanted to have a discussion about planning's work plan and how that relates to the Bethel area plan. So when you see the council calendar come out, there'll be a topic to talk about the planning division work plan in Bethel. And that will be an opportunity for you to see all of the things that are out there that are in progress, that, things that are required from the state, the things that have been directed by you, some of the follow-up work. It's a lot in that department. And we'll start to sort of help understand where's the health overlay zone going to fit? When are we going to be able to start that? And I think it'll be a really productive conversation. So more on that. I just wanted to flag that because a lot will continue to happen while you're on break.
Thank you. Counselor Zelenka.
Quick question, and in that planning calendar, that will include the long-standing, like over 5 years, the university area has been waiting for that plan development or for the area around the university,
It's listed as one of the items.
right? Because they've been waiting a very long time, very patiently, and they cannot be patient if that gets bumped, but thank you.
I just want to say I certainly recognize that Counselor Zelenka. Bethel's been waiting for what, 40 years?
This will be a good conversation for y'all to have later.
Well, thank you.
Let's not ruin that Goshen wastewater vibe.
Well, very good. Thank you all. And just want to mention to the public, although we are going on what's known as council break, that basically means no council meetings or work sessions. The work of the city still continues. And I know my schedule is no less full during break than it is when we're in session. So that's an important thing to remember. And thank you to all who are watching. Thank you to all of you. And I wish you all a happy, healthy, and at least restful period when we're not sitting in these meetings. With that, meeting's adjourned.
Thank you so much.